call this meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States to the republic, of the nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Lane,
Here.
Councilmember
Yes.
Whitmer,
Oh,
Councilmember Lewis,
Here.
Vice Mayor DeGolia,
yes.
and Mayor Holland.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Have any public comment? This is the part of the meeting reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matter that is not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the city council under special. Great. So now we are at the disclosure of ex parte communication. Wants to disclose. Okay, departmental written reports. Does any questions? They want to? Okay. Mona, do you want to do the report out of our closed session?
Sure, thank you. The council did meet in closed session on one item of existing litigation. There was no public comment in advance of the meeting, and the council provided direction to staff.
Moving on to our consent agenda, is there any public comment?
To approve consent account.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. So for the agenda, I am wondering if you guys would be switching the public hearing regular agenda so we can 6, 7, 8 quickly and staff can get into the meat of it. Well, no, there's Robert can leave about it.
Fine.
Okay with you guys?
It's okay. Is that okay with you, Eric?
It's great with me.
Okay. Cool. So we'll skip ahead to item 6 of the regular agenda, which is the agreement for event management services at Holbrook Park.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We are requesting that you approve a service agreement with Cheetah Little Catering of Burlingame to provide event management services at Holbrook Palmer Park and direct the city attorney to prepare the agreement and the city manager to execute. As you know, Holbrook Palmer Park is our one beautiful park in town, comprised of 22 acres. Among the various facilities there, we do have some rental facilities, including the main house, the carriage house, the Jennings Pavilion, along with various outdoor areas such as the water tower lawn, the event garden, and North Meadow that are available for rent. Historically, we've contracted for event management services. And most recently, that contract was with Cater 2, which started providing us service in 2021. At the end of 23, they basically said that they could no longer provide the service and they backed out of the contract. And since then, we have been managing events to a much lower degree, first with part-time temporary staff, and then right now with the assistance of the city manager's office and Michael, as well as Will, we've been kind of taking care of it, but it's not sustainable that way, as you all know. We had released requests for proposals a few times, and we did not get any responses up until the most recent call that was due at the end of September. And we received 2 proposals. You have a summary of kind of what those proposals were, and you have copies of the proposals that were provided. After reviewing the proposals, interviewing both of the event management companies, We determined that they were both well qualified and could provide the service, but their focus was quite a bit different. One was looking to really ramp up events at the park and really make it a more showcase event heavy venue, which is a little bit contrary to the way that we see the park being positioned. We look at the park it being our only recreation area, wanting to preserve the character of the park and not have events overrun it. Cheetah Little Catering was a little less heavy on the rentals. They do provide this similar service in San Mateo at the San Mateo Garden Center, where they manage the rentals there, do the showings, do the bookings. They offer catering services, obviously, but they are non-exclusive, and the same would be here. And so it really folds into what they already do. It's a natural build on, and it's actually an opportunity for them to provide an additional venue for those that come through the garden center and say, well, this isn't big enough. And so they would have that other opportunity. They'll be responsible for marketing, doing the scheduling, scheduling of showings, responding to customer inquiries, doing the bookings, taking in the revenue fees, and basically managing the events, scheduling from soup to nuts. The RFP that we released offered up a $3,000 a month startup, understanding that somebody can't just come in and just take on the responsibility for event management services without some sort of guarantee of income. And so we had that in the RFP for the first 3 months. The proposal from Cheetah Little Catering was a base fee of $1,625 a month plus 35% of the revenue that comes in from the rentals. That contrasts to Latin and Asian hospitality group, wherein they offered a tiered revenue share. They were looking at taking 75% of the booking revenue for the first 100,000, and then it would go to 27%. And so it's a slightly, I mean, it's a real difference in terms of how the monetary compensation would be. So following the review of all that and the interviews, we consulted with the subcommittee consisting of Councilmember Lewis and Councilmember Widmer. We reviewed the proposals. They were agreeing with staff's initial assessment, and then they went and did a tasting with Cheetah Little Catering at the San Mateo Garden Center. Things went well, and so with that, we're seeking your approval to enter into an agreement with them. There's some fine-tuned negotiation on scope that we need to do, but other than that, we're seeking your approval.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions, or does the?
What's the length of the contract?
One more time.
3 years contract?
So it's an initial 3 years plus the opportunity for us to extend it annually for another 3 years so that we don't have to go through this effort, provided that they're providing good service. I mean, we expect them to provide good service. Our desire is to build a relationship as we had done in the past. And so offering a really short-term contract doesn't really work for them hiring somebody to help us here and that kind of thing. So we start off with a 3-year.
Thank you.
Questions?
Is there an exit clause in it?
There's
Mutual?
a mutual exit clause. Anybody can terminate within 30 days. If we see deficiencies, our first thing is not going to be to terminate the contract. It's to work with them to see if we can get whatever deficiencies there are to get it up to the expected level. We expect that they'll do that. As I said, they've been providing similar service in San Mateo since 2021.
I will add that Anthony came with us, right? So there were three for the tasting, and we were served, I don't know, 4 different courses. There was a lot of different food. It's all very good.
So I did want to highlight one thing. So we've had a couple of different event management companies help us over the years. The first one, when I started here, was Catering by Dana. And their fee was strictly based on a percentage. They again offered catering services, were non-exclusive. So you come in, you rent the facilities, you can use them, you can use whoever you want. When we entered into the agreement with Cater 2, the arrangement was quite a bit different. They were looking at their revenue stream was predominantly from catering services. So they had an exclusive catering contract, and we would retain the full rental fee and get a small percentage of their catering income. Obviously, that didn't work out very well for them. And so going back to that other model where we're sharing that revenue is appropriate.
Questions? Or any public comment on the item? Okay. No? All right. What's everyone think?
So Robert, just based on your last comment, proposed compensation with Cheetah Little closer to Catering by Dana? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
but there's a base fee so that they can support their staff at $1,625 a month plus 35% of the revenue. So it's a more guaranteed
Plus 35% of
rental revenue.
and if they do any catering,
There's no share. But again, if you're renting the facility, you can choose whoever you want.
I understand it's not exclusive.
Yeah.
You don't have a share of any catering.
All right. Back to us for comments. Comments or?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract for event management services at Holbrook Palmer Park with Cheetah Little.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor? Next item is item 7, consideration and adoption of a policy regarding disruption of service impacting public two-way participation. A council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be taking this one. The legislature proposed Senate Bill 707, which the governor adopted and signed on October 3rd. It becomes effective on July 1st, 2026, and has multiple brand new requirements pursuant to the Brown Act, which is our open meeting law. However, one of the requirements is that any eligible legislative body, and that is a defined term in the legislation to mean a city over, I believe, 30,000 or a city within a county that has a population of 600,000 must have additional requirements. So because San Mateo County has a population of over 600,000, this does apply to the town of Atherton. So what we're supposed to do is we have to adopt a policy prior to the effective date, which is July 1st, which addresses how disruptions happen when the town council hosts a Brown Act meeting such as tonight's, and there is Zoom that is provided. So first of all, the two-way teleconferencing must be provided. Going forward right now, it's a professional courtesy, but again, following July, we have to do it. And then there has to be, the proposed policy that's attached addresses what happens if there is an outage or a technical difficulty where the public cannot participate fully in the meeting. Under that circumstance, the policy that's presented for you, staff or the city clerk informs the council that there's a disruption in service. The mayor calls a brief recess. Staff works to try to work on a solution to get the Zoom back up. If we are able to quickly do that, then we can resume the meeting. The council may meet in closed session if there's a closed session agenda item that is on the agenda while there's an outage. But importantly, the town cannot conduct its regular business until the Zoom is back up. We have to wait an hour at a minimum to try to make the Zoom work again. If after an hour it's still unable to come online, the council can make a finding that it tried its best efforts, it was not successful, and then we can resume the meeting. Again, this is a requirement pursuant to Senate Bill 707, and the council is being asked to adopt the policy tonight.
Mona, it said, you know, you have to wait an hour, and if you can't get it up, then you can continue on, et cetera. If it's late at night and the power goes out, can we recess to another date certain? As opposed to have to wait an hour to say, well, we'll finish the meeting or we'll postpone the meeting that time.
That's a really good question. That has not been addressed in SB 707, but I do believe that the council can vote to adjourn the meeting to a date and time certain. And we would, of course, notice that on our website and on the agenda so that anyone who is not able to see that is aware of the new meeting date and time.
So then we would have to write that into this policy as we adopt it?
Well, the existing Brown Act already allows meetings to be adjourned to a date and time certain. So I think we can just take advantage of the existing law.
Thanks.
Okay, any public comment? Okay,
I have one quick question, actually. But would we always have to find that the public interest outweighed the remote access every time we continued it or stopped it? Would that be the finding that we'd have to make every time?
That's correct.
okay. Comments?
I'll move the approval of the amended ordinance. And
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Okay, next. Exciting, let's to a test. Okay, moving on to item 8, consideration and potential removal of the Environmental Programs Committee. Is
I'll handle this one. So the council appointed team member Sophia Tang in July of 2025 to the. She attended the first meeting of that committee and then has since had 3 unexcused executive absences. Town's resolution, that's automatic removal unless the council wants to override that. That's why it's before you. As of the date of the staff report, we haven't had any further contact from committee member Tang. We did reach out via phone and email, no response. So we this evening concur with that.
questions? Questions? Okay, do we have any public comment to the public? Oh, okay, back to comments.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever experienced anything that we've ever. Did we?
Somebody off the planning committee.
On a planning commission.
Yeah.
Just planning commission.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, it's a rare occurrence. Doesn't make me feel actually been sick or something and out of town, but we do need committee members to sign up, show up.
It's been over 6 months then, or almost 6 months. It's 3 consecutive unexcused meetings and we meet every other month. It's over 6 months and there's been no call. I'd like to recommend that we give recommendation to the staff here.
Direction,
Concurrence with removal.
the action.
Because we have a
Automatic.
rule that says she's going to be removed unless we override.
Correct.
Okay,
All right.
override it. All right. Cool. Well, that is the end of the regular agenda. Let's open the public hearing, which is item 5, introduction and first reading of ordinance that amends the municipal code to address potential development. Up to you.
I'm going to be Brittany tonight. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. Just tonight.
Be careful what you wish for.
I thought she was at least going to introduce me, but that's okay. So anyway, let's go to the agenda. So let me just show you what we're going to talk about this evening, put this presentation together. It largely mirrors the staff report. Want to go through the project schedule, which is largely driven by the state, by HCD, and getting an ordinance adopted by July 1st. Then we'll talk a little bit about what is SB 79, what are the state requirements that are mandated that we must follow. How does SB 79 work in Atherton? How we went about preparing the development standards that are before you tonight as attachment 4. That's the drafted ordinance. And then some findings and next steps. So the project schedule is we've already been to the Planning Commission last month. Prior to that, we had held a public workshop. And of course, prior to that, Brittany was with you folks in December, giving you sort of a little introduction to SB 79. So after tonight, which is our first reading, we hope to have a second reading with you on March 18th. At that point, we will submit it, our draft, to HCD for a 3-month review period. That's fair. They picked the 3 months, not us. And hopefully we will have their approval by July 1st, which is when applicants can come in with a SB 79 proposal. Next. So what is SB 79? It overrides our Atherton ability to have zoning limitations for denser buildings, particularly if they are within 1/4 mile of a pedestrian entry to the Menlo Park Caltrain station. So within that 1/4 mile, the state mandates that we have to allow building heights up to 75 feet on any residential parcel. A maximum density no less than 120 dwelling units per acre. And it's interesting to note here that if a project applicant does not propose a project with at least 30 dwelling units per acre, they cannot take advantage of any part of SB 79. And I have a chart a little bit later that compares the various parcels, and that'll be important there. And then the other thing we have to do is we cannot establish a maximum floor area of anything less than 3.5. Next. So some other requirements, there are some affordability requirements. There's for low, very low, and extremely low, and it's important to note that those are all or. So the applicant has the option of coming in with 13% low income or, and then they can move on through there. There's a limit on the average unit size of 1,750 net square feet. So that means if they come in and their project has 111 dwelling units, they cannot exceed 111 times 1,750. They can have 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units, studios, but the average cannot go beyond 1,750. They're exempt from CEQA. Now, the top bullet point on the right column is going to be important as for the rest of my presentation as I try to explain how we went about developing the standards that we did. Since the state basically mandates height, FAR, and density, we were left with other things that allowed us our way into trying to achieve what we could to maintain as much as we could of a town character. So parking, access, setbacks, that's the primary tool we used because we had the most flexibility. We didn't have a state mandate on that. Circulation, open space, privacy, things like that. So why we're doing this is without any kind of local standards on July 1st, if there are no standards in place, someone could come into any one of these 7 parcels and propose along state lines, 120 dwelling units per acre, 7 stories. They wouldn't have any setbacks that they would have to follow because those will not have been established. They wouldn't have any parking access. They wouldn't have any refuse service access, things like that. So that's the primary thing we're trying to do is get something in place by July 1st that allows some sense of protection of the town character. So any of those local standards that we do, and that's the top column, the top bullet in column right, anything we do, we cannot interfere with the ability of the applicant to achieve those density, height, and FAR minimums. So we've been,
Before you leave that
Yes.
page, can we ask what,
sure.
in bottom on the left, it says exempting qualifying projects from CEQA unless discretionary actions are required. What kind of discretionary actions?
Well, I suppose it could be something like if they want to have, use a different setback, or so they apply to have review. So they would have discretionary review. That would allow them to be
Subject to CEQA.
right.
One example, right, would be a variance, right?
So if we adopt policy and it includes setbacks and they seek to reduce those setbacks, their effort to seek to reduce those setbacks could cause us to subject the project to CEQA?
Potentially, this is your city attorney speaking. The answer to that is potentially. SB 79 does not expressly exempt these types of projects from CEQA. Instead, it says that SB 79 projects can rely on other streamlining opportunities that CEQA provides. For example, Senate Bill 35, which allows exemptions for multifamily as long as it's infill. If, however, an applicant seeks a variance, by way of an example, to modify the town's setback requirements, we would have to investigate whether there would be any impacts to the environment from that approval and potentially incorporate mitigation measures to offset such impacts.
But that, Mona, that does not come into play if they're using the density bonus.
That is correct. Yes.
So another thing to consider is a sports court within the setback area could require a special structures permit. Special structures, variance, any tree removal action, those are all discretionary actions that would elevate to the planning commission and trigger CEQA unless they were able to use the density bonus program to circumvent that.
Mona and Brittany, if it does trigger CEQA, is it triggering CEQA for the entirety of the project, or is it triggering CEQA for sports court for?
The totality of the project, because under CEQA, you can't piecemeal portions of it.
That's one. Set, well,
All right.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. So just to get everybody on the same page, what are we talking about when we use these numbers? 120 dwelling units per acre, 30 dwelling units per acre. These are from ABAG and other local architects. So I think it's important to note that, for instance, the project on the left is achieving 120 dwelling units per acre without actually going to 75 feet and 7 stories. So certain architects, certain developers, they are able to get the density that we're talking about without necessarily going to the full 7 stories of height. Throughout this presentation, however, there's a lot of different images of buildings, and we've tried as much as possible to get tall buildings so that we're being honest about what we're talking about, that it is height that we're really going to be seeing on these parcels.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So the building on the left of 120 dwellings per acre, it looks like there's a full underground parking garage structure, correct?
Correct.
Would you,
I think it's also partially on the ground floor. It looks like you go in and there's some parts, there's parking behind, but I'm certain to park that many units, they're also going underground.
okay, so either on the ground floor or, oh,
So you can see that parcel is pretty deep, that project anyway.
yeah, it goes
It's
back
back
quite a way.
quite a bit.
Well, it's an acre or more.
Well, not necessarily. This photo is 120 dwelling units per acre, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a 1 acre parcel.
Not yet.
Okay. So as I said earlier, adopting an ordinance is the primary way we have to establish our own characteristic standards to match what the state mandates are putting in place. So the timeline, as I alluded to on my second slide, needs to be, the law is going into effect July 1st. So that's why we're trying to get this moving through the process, the workshop, the planning commission, first reading tonight. HCD can take as much as 90 days to review our ordinance, our draft ordinance. And then in order to do that, we want to submit it by April 1st.
I just want to drive home the fact that HCD will review the ordinance. And so it is possible that HCD has fix-it requirements that we would then have to immediately start moving on as soon as possible so that it could address projects that come in sooner than later.
So you think April 1, that seems like it's tight. If there's any visions.
The entire timeline is incredibly tight. The law was adopted and signed by the governor last fall, and it's being implemented in under a year. As you're seeing, in order to do any sort of zoning or adoption of standards, we have gone through a public workshop, a planning commission meeting. We have at least 2 meetings with the city council, and then we have the HCD review time period, which is codified. So this is an incredibly tight time frame for local jurisdictions to adhere to.
I have one other thing to add to that. So Senate Bill 79 also requires HCD to come up with guidance on the implementation of this new law. They do not have to come up with that in any particular time frame. So apropos of what Brittany just said about HCD's review, it's also possible that HCD interprets portions of this law in different ways in the future, and we have to come back to revise even an adopted, approved ordinance at some point. Very similar to our ADU ordinances where we've reviewed it, there's been changes, we've had to come back and continuously make modifications.
Yeah, the question I have is that if they come back and deny it, and then that pushes us, does that, first of all, the process after they deny it, would that require all the public comment and everything back again for us to get a change?
That's certainly possible.
Okay, so then the follow-on to that is then if we miss the July 1st date because of their input, does that mean that we're still susceptible to a developer coming in and just choosing whatever they want to choose?
Yes.
Great, good planning. All right.
Maybe we should move the April 1st date forward a little.
Well, I mean, at this cadence, we'll be ready to submit if we do the second meeting on March 18th, on March 19th, right? So we're a couple weeks in advance, but we don't have so much time that we can afford to do another circuit through local legislative processes before the implementation date.
Okay, Bill.
If they don't like certain things in our suggestions, red line those out, but everything else stays the same, or is the whole thing in total rejected?
Technically, the entire thing rejected.
Excuse me?
Technically, the entire ordinance can be rejected. I have seen letters from HCD on ordinances for ADUs or SB9, for example, where the direction from HCD is simply you have to waive this requirement until you get to the point of addressing it in an ordinance. But if you read the state law, it is on the side of we can't enforce anything until it's approved by HCD. So we would need HCD to give us that kind of redlining feedback.
Okay, but they've been reasonable. So it's possible that they would say, don't like this and don't like that, but other than that, you're in reasonable shape.
Keep in mind, HCD's position is the middle person between the legislators and the implementers, and they're tasked with taking feedback from all of the local jurisdictions that are trying to address this requirement, as well as developers who now can really reach out to HCD and rely on their interpretations. So they're kind of the hub for interpretation. And yes, in theory, they have more direct access to the legislators because they're representing the state. But in my experience, I've seen them not necessarily be able to influence policy all the time. So they have to rely on their own interpretations too.
Okay, thank you. Next, okay. So here we are looking at the Menlo Park Station in the middle, and then you see 6 parcels up to the north, and then the 7th parcel to the west there at El Camino Real and Valparaiso. Most of the parcels, well, I'll get into this later. I have the sizes of all of them, and we can go through that. But these are the 7 parcels that we're looking at for this ordinance on these.
You have letters on the packet. They're not letters on your slide.
On the slide.
I know.
Up.
but-
The
okay,
letters
there
on
they
the
are, there they are.
parcel,
Oh,
and then
thank you.
it's
I
in the
missed it.
table
I
on
was
the
looking over
right.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Next. So let's look at these parcels. As you can see, all of them except for the 99 Victoria are 1 acre or more. And as I said earlier,
47.
Oral. Almost.
There are 2 that are slightly below an acre. There
Yeah.
are 3, right?
So as I said earlier, in order for an applicant to take full advantage of SB 79, their application has to be at least 30 dwelling units per acre. So if you look at the second column from the right, that kind of gives sort of the minimum and maximum yield. We're using 120 dwelling units per acre as our maximum. So this is kind of important because you can look at, for instance, 99 Victoria, it's less than 1/3 of an acre, and they could come in with a project that's as little as 10 dwelling units and still take advantage of SB 79. So it's not that they have to come in at 120 dwelling units per acre and do the maximum density. But this is sort of the range. It is the range of the parcels. We even show what are flag lots and what are not, and move from there as marking all of these different parcels. Next.
But just
Yes.
Yeah. Look to that side.
re-emphasize a point you made previously, if they did come in at 99 Victoria with the 10 units, which you show as the minimum, the square footage for that be 17,000 odd.
The
right?
maximum,
Maximum is 1,750 each.
Per average
Average.
dwelling unit.
Okay, but if they're doing 10, then their average would be 17,50.
Correct.
17,000 fire parts. But obviously, by FA.
That's a good observation. What Councilmember DeGolia is pointing out, with the average maximum floor area, that could be less than the 3.5 FAR. However, that could be you could go beyond the net habitable floor area by the garage space or an accessory structure. Those things might tack that up a little bit high, but still
Wait, a
17,000.
garage doesn't count toward average square footage?
I don't believe so. We'll get to that. We have a definition for that. But even then, in terms of accessory structures, you're not going to see that 17,000 balloon up to 47,000.
So I have a question, a real quick follow-up. So on the 99 Victoria, if they hit the 10, they would then qualify for the bonuses for low income or other income automatically then, right? So all of a sudden that could be 20 or 15 because of the bonus, right?
Right. These do not include density bonus modifying their numbers, their yield.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Next. So as I said earlier, the top three bullets, density, height, and FAR, are basically mandated by the state as to what we need to do. So that left us with setbacks, and this was sort of the driving force that since the first of the year, we've been modeling how to fit this space, this FAR and this height onto these parcels. So that's where we did a lot of our playing around and modeling and trying to figure out how to get things to fit. Next. So the first thing we did was we used our existing RM40 standards, which has a 40-foot setback on all sides, and just said, okay, can this fit? Well, it doesn't. If you want to stay within 75 feet, we went to the public workshop. It was pretty unanimous that people do not want to exceed 75 feet. They do not want to exceed the 3-point FAR. So that left us really with modulating where the setback goes to try to get the FAR that we have to allow to fit within that development envelope. I know I've said this before for those of you that were as part of the housing element process and we showed these. It's really important to not look at these as buildings. There's just simply the arrangement of mass, the arrangement of square footage. It's not a building, so don't get alarmed. You can get alarmed later. But right now it's just FAR. So then going on, so we started modeling and playing around and say, okay, well, what do we, if we want to really get underneath 75 feet and we want to provide the minimum amount of FAR that we have to provide, where do we go with these setbacks? We did a lot of different modeling. We didn't put it in the staff report. We didn't put it in this presentation, but this is where we landed with a 15-foot frontage, a front setback on any street-facing frontage. So we're not necessarily discriminating by, well, what's the address? We're mostly just looking at what's the street frontage, because as I think the nickname for SB 79 is the Transit Oriented Development Law or something like that. So one of the big points is to facilitate pedestrian activity, safe pedestrian environments between these developments and a quarter mile away, the Menlo Park Station. So we're envisioning that these frontages should be lively, they should be safe, and they should be pedestrian friendly. Next. Similarly, on the Valparaiso parcel, we ended up here with a little bit different of setbacks. So 15 still, this has three frontages. It has El Camino Real, it has Valparaiso, and then it has that's a misspelling, that should say Victoria. It has a Victoria frontage. And so we kept playing with getting that the massing to fit underneath 75 feet. And that gave us a 25-foot setback against the R1B parcel adjacent. I think we've had a lot of discussions about this parcel at staff. I think what's really going to drive the development or the ability to achieve any kind of density on this will be not so much the FAR and the height, but access. Because you can't access off El Camino Real, you can't access off Valparaiso because the distance to El Camino Real is too short. So you're really left with all of the vehicular activity or circulation that's going to enter and exit this parcel is going to have to be about where that 25 is above the word Laurel. Next. So let me just go over a little bit about what we heard. First, we went to a public workshop in this room. I think there was about 12 or 15, maybe 18 people in the room, and then there was 10 people online on Zoom. And so there was, a fair amount of people attending. And in the left column, you can see some of the statement, the comments that we got. And as I said earlier, I think one of the things that we really heard was because we showed them some, well, what about if we get a larger setback? Would you be willing to, as an incentive, give the applicant more FAR? What about if we get a deeper setback against an R1B parcel? Would you be willing to let them go above 75 feet? I don't want to say it was unanimous, but it was pretty almost unanimous that people did not want to see any more in height or FAR than we had already granted, certainly not any more in density. And then that left us with really figuring out what does the setbacks on these parcels need to be to not exceed 75 feet and not exceed 3.5 FAR. As you saw on the earlier modeling, we started to treat these parcels differently. If something was larger than a half an acre, which is the case for 6 of them, we used different setbacks. And if something is less than half an acre, the Victoria parcel, we used different setbacks. In all cases, the front setbacks on a street frontage is 15 feet. It's just that R1 adjacent side or rear setback that is different between the half acre and above or half acre and below. So after the workshop, about 10 days later, we went to the Planning Commission. We gave them a presentation that's pretty similar to what you're seeing tonight and what was in your staff report in terms of laying out the different chapters of Chapter 1759. And they primarily were really focused on the open space issue. And the chair in particular was really questioning if we were providing too much, that we had a minimum amount, and he was concerned, and I think it was a good concern he had. It was rightly placed, that it was a lot of, when you add it up, it was like a minimum of a certain square feet per unit, and then you add that up, and it created a lot of open space. So the Planning Commission, by and large, wanted us to really go look at that issue, to re-examine it. Were we using the right number? Were we using the right methodology? And as it turned out, 4 planning commissioners voted to send this on to you folks. And the primary reason that the person who did not vote in favor was this open space issue. And he felt that it wasn't really the right, he just didn't feel comfortable with it. So we took all of that advice and we went and we did some case study analysis. Next. So that created what's before you in the,
If I could.
yes.
So then how did you end up at 10%?
Well, do you want to wait or do you want to jump
You said
ahead?
that we did some analysis and then
Oh.
we ended up with our number. And I said, well, how did you do that? I know what the number is.
Oh, actually, I
know
don't
what
have that
you
slide.
Had in your
Yeah.
pack. I just want to know
Right.
what was.
So
the
we
date.
looked at a few different communities, Menlo Park, Redwood City, Campbell, and San Mateo. In Campbell, they used what we ended up using, 10% of the lot area, and then it's up to the applicant to figure out how to use it. You get 10%, you can use private, you can use common, but that's your amount. Menlo Park uses a similar standard, but I think they have 25 to 30%, I believe is what theirs is, 25%. So one of the reasons we decided to go with that lower number was because the planning commission had, in a 4-to-1 vote, expressed concern, even in the 4-to-1 vote, with the amount of open space that we were providing. So we really wanted to look at it seriously. And then also, hopefully you've noticed that balconies are prohibited as private open space on facades that look at an R1A or R1B parcel. So we knew that the private open space was going to be impacted. There's most of these parcels, you're going to be limited in the amount of private open space in the way of a balcony that you can do. So we knew the number was going to need to be low. And so therefore, we went with the Campbell example of 10% rather than the Menlo Park example of 25%.
It's short, but okay.
Is there a slide that we're gonna get into the weeds on open space?
Yes,
Okay.
we have some, and if it's not enough, we have some others that we might be able to find.
Okay.
But I have a couple of
Yeah.
slides about common open space and private open space.
Okay.
So this is the chapters that are in section 1759. We talk about density in 1759-20. Well, these are the chapters, and then I think we can go through them. And of course, before you tonight is not just 1759, but also we've added, we're recommending that we add some definitions in 1760 chapter. So first, what is it? What is the characteristics of the district? So as we said, we're using the state mandate of 120 as our absolute maximum. So that's what we're using as well. The average unit size cannot exceed 1,750 square feet of usable space. And then there's affordability minimums. So there's, again, those first 3 bullets that are put in place by SB 79. And then there's our own local inclusionary housing ordinance. Next. So height, 75. Setbacks, as I said, they're set for differentiating between parcels that are over half an acre or a lot that is less than half an acre. And then the floor area ratio, we set as our maximum the 3.5 FAR, which is the state's minimum that they're allowing us to do in their mandate. Thanks. Yes.
When these setbacks, like you're not making, you've got a setback for front and for side and rear, as you stated. There's not any particular adjustment or difference if the parcel that it's adjacent to is single-family residence.
It's actually always a single-family residence. So,
It's always a single, well, wait, no, sometimes you're next to a street.
well, that would be a front setback. As that we're treating all streets as frontages. So that would be the front setback. And until,
But sometimes you have a street that's adjacent to a side setback.
I don't believe so.
Have a corner, you can have a corner, but they would
Have
both be
corners.
considered
As
front.
Town Planner Brittany Bendix, in the setback section of the ordinance, it says front yard, and then any lot line that provides frontage on a public right of way shall be treated as a front lot line. So that is what Tom is explaining.
So for the Victoria Manor lot, that's on have multiple front.
Yes.
You have 3 fronts essentially and per side.
Time you're adjacent to a street, it's considered.
Yes. At least that was our approach. Happy to talk about it, but that was the approach we took.
So all the other ones would be adjacent to a R1A or R1B lot.
It's just Victoria that's adjacent to R1B. All the others
Or R1A.
today are adjacent to R1A. They could develop using SB 79 and be different. We didn't address that. We just called it one setback against an R1A.
The 0.8 acre lot had an R1A, or R1A had.
I didn't make that decision.
Doesn't-
Some of the parcels there came in less than an acre.
There's lots of parcels in Lindenwood, all of which are R1A and
They're
many of
Atherton
which are
acres.
less
They're
than.
Atherton acres, but they're 0.5.
No,
Oh,
they're
point
0.6.
They're 0.78,
All right,
there's a lot
no.
of sevens, yeah.
Let's move.
I think that a lot of these SB 79 parcels that are in Atherton were not that long ago one parcel, and it looked like it got carved up in a different way. And so
Yeah, they
obviously
did, and
not
they-
everything can
yes,
become an acre.
You're right, and they were just eyeballed
Right.
property lines.
So I had a quick question on what you just said about the setback. On, if A and D both were developed as SB 79 about the same time, what would be the setback from between A and D?
As I was saying, we didn't get into that. We didn't deal with that. I think
Okay.
we dealt with that with the RM.
I'm just
20?
trying, what I'm looking at is if zoning changes over time, how does that impact the development of those spaces?
We didn't get that
Okay,
far down the
That's fine. I'll
tracks.
look at it later.
So just to restate what Eric just said, there's no distinction between if the side setback is R1A or R1B versus
Correct.
a RM.
And so one thing that we're seeing in the RM10 properties, for example, is there's this, well, if your neighbor develops, then you can have the reduced setback. And so they're all kind of waiting to see who's going to develop first. We didn't set that up here. The side or the rear, it's going to say this, it's going to stay the same requirement regardless of what your neighbor is doing. The only reduction, really, the 15 feet, is only on the street facing property lines.
Somebody develops 11 to 1123 right next door to the SB 79, it doesn't affect setbacks.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, next. So in section D, we deal with issues relating to site access, both vehicular and pedestrian. And there's also some streetscape standards. So for site access, for instance, you can see there on the left is the queuing distance is maintained within the building facade. So we have standards that there has to be a queuing distance between the sidewalk and the gate if the underground parking provides a gate. How it fits into the facade, we have some standards about that, but these are the issues that we deal with in this section. With regard to pedestrian access and streetscape, we talk about the different kinds of units and how they connect to the sidewalk. That's mandatory, that there has to be a site network, a pedestrian network on the site that connects out to the public sidewalk. Street trees are required as part of the development application along those street frontages. And we also put in safety visibility corners at street corners to ensure safe sight lines for these buildings being close to the street. Yes.
The picture you're showing here, of course, it just got the trees in there, but it's different than the photo that you had in the pack. And so talking more about this. So there is a green space that you have the tree and you have the light post. You have the 3-foot or 4-foot sidewalk in that 15 space. Those aren't in the middle. They're not co-joined like they were in the pack.
Correct. Yeah.
It's okay. No problem. Just wanted to point.
Question. For the Victoria Manor lot, they do pedestrian, I mean, Valparaiso. And all the cars obviously have to go through the neighborhood. I'm just,
We did,
pedestrian, I'd want to start on that corner.
right. We didn't do anything that would prohibit that. And I think that would be a good solution because literally, like I said earlier, the cars are not going to be there. They're going to be coming in somewhere else. And that's the intersection with signals in all directions. Next. So open space, this is got two components. This is the one that we modeled after the case study we did for the Campbell example. This is common open space. So for instance, this is space that's open to all residents. It's probably not open to somebody just wandering in off the sidewalk, but it's common open space. So there's like a fire pit here in the foreground. You can see they have a pool, they have a deck, they have pool chairs, they have units that look out onto that open space. And so what we did a lot here was in this section, was try to differentiate common from private and leave it up to the applicant once they have the 10% minimum to figure out where they're going to put it. Yes.
So when we looked at the RM10, okay, and we had all the discussions on that, it's pretty clear, said no pools, no sports courts, things like that. We're going to be prohibited because there's gathering points making a lot of noise and things like that. So, of course, your picture here, you're showing a pool and you got a fire pit and things like that. So I guess the question is, are we going to put those similar things that we have in the RM10 to here, prohibiting certain things that would be creating additional noise in a essentially single family?
We're happy to take that direction, but right now there's nothing to prohibit a pool on a project of this size and scale. Generally, these kinds of developments will have these kinds of amenities because of the number of people and number of families living in the building. So we're just assuming, unless you tell us otherwise, that it could potentially happen. So what we tried to spend our time doing was dealing with noise and sound buffers, visual buffers, things like that, so that if someone did come in and have this kind of an activity, it would be not, opening out adjacent to the R1A, that you might shield it like this.
My 2 cents to you is, first off, most of these are just a stone's throw away from the pool at Menlo Park. They're just, okay, I don't think they need a pool. And I personally would like to see those prohibited, just like we had in the RM10. I don't see any difference here to privacy and protecting the neighbors than what we have provided to smaller developments in RM10.
A question for you. Does the pool, two questions. Does the pool count as in that 10%? Question number one. Question number two is pool a special structures permit that would also trigger CEQA?
The first question, yes, I think you could count the square footage of the pool as part of the open space area. I don't know about the second question, if it would need a special structures permit.
No, it's not set up currently to require or trigger a special structures permit. The way that the common open space is set up is specific for setbacks from R1 lots. Common open space shall be a minimum of 10 feet from any shared lot line with an adjacent lot with an R1 zoning designation. And then no common open space designated for active recreation, which includes play areas, sports courts, or dog runs, shall be located within 40 feet of a shared R1 lot line. And common open space located within 60 feet of an R1 lot line shall be at grade only. So sometimes what you see with this scale of development is that it's podium structure, and the developer will actually place the pool. I think this is probably at grade. It's not a podium setup, but they'll place the pool above the parking garage, and then they'll insulate it with building around it, because the residents presumably want that privacy as well.
My 2 cents is same as when we were doing RM10. Our focus should be on protecting the neighbors, okay? What we heard during that period of time, the neighbors and it's the same thing should apply here, that sports courts and things like that, pools and things like that should not be allowed. Now, if somebody said, hey, I'd like to build it, I'm going to build a box shaped facility and in the middle of it's going to be a pool. You know, I don't know if that would be something that neighbors would object to. I would think that on a whole, they could go with a variance, but on a whole, I would say it's the same principle that we had for RM10 should continue on.
That's a change to the ordinance, so if we could get some consensus.
Well, I think right now we're in questions,
Right.
so let's do that before we start
I want to finish the
opining.
presentation before I start.
Okay, next. Oh. So now then, private open space. So generally, we're talking about, and we stipulate this, that it has to be accessed from one specific unit. So you're really talking about a balcony or a ground floor patio or something that's segregated off and available only to the residential unit that addresses it. So these are the two primary components that make up open space, and it's up to the applicant, as I said, to decide where they're going to put that percentage. Yes.
So hearing you here, and I'm still thinking about it with the 17 maximum square footage average per unit. And I'm assuming that or I don't know if it's our ordinance or it's state law that says that units between the affordable units and the market units have to be very comparable. Comparable in terms of size and comparable in terms of amenities. So I'm assuming that what that means is that there's not going to be any real difference in square footage for a one-bedroom unit that's market versus a one-bedroom unit that complies with the affordability requirement, and the same for a two-bedroom and a two-bedroom. And that would also apply to the issue of balcony. Like the market units couldn't have balconies and the affordable units not have them.
Yes, amenities like balconies would be taken into consideration when you're looking at which units are designated as the affordable units on the floor plan and kind of the distribution.
In the course of crafting these, and I don't know if that has any impact on the development standards, but I think it's extremely important we maintain that requirement, that there be no distinction on average between the market units.
So I have
Sure.
a piggyback on that then. So if somebody wants to make them the same, let's say, they say, okay, I'll have 5 regular price units and 20 affordable one bedrooms. And then I have 20 two bedrooms, regular price, and 2 affordable. Do I have to keep the number the same, or is it just the quality of the unit? So they hit their 10% number by shoving everything into a one bedroom as opposed to,
The proportionality that you're raising here is somewhat
Jesus.
challenging because you have more affordable units than market rate units. But
Yeah, but that's
generally,
the
what we
floor.
would look at is the proportionality of, are there as many affordable units that have the components of the comparable market rate units, and is that equitable?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is basically they could shove everything in.
And it's not just balconies and finishes, it's also floor location, right? You
Right.
can't have all of your low income units on the ground floor. You would have to separate that.
Right. But you don't have to do equal of each.
You mean equal in the number of units?
Right.
It should be reflective of whatever the affordability requirement is. So if you have a 10% requirement for low income and you have 10 units with balconies, one of those units is low income with the balcony.
No, I'm talking about the number of bedrooms and the size relative to that. So I've decided that I'm going to hit my 10% number by providing a lot of one-bedroom units and not too many two-bedroom units. That seems like it hits percentages, but it doesn't really address equity.
They would have to modify that so that it was more comparable.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Balconies, and we talked about RM10, balconies would have to be front street focused, not on back of the facing a. Is that the case here or is it not?
Correct. We basically, I mean, we even used the same diagram. So we carried that over
Okay,
from the other.
thank you.
Or they could do a courtyard with them all facing towards the courtyard in the middle.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Okay, next. So, as I've been saying then, there would be a minimum, one big number, and then it's up to the applicant to decide how they want to divide that up. You'll note though, so even though we don't say there's so much private and so much common, if you see the right column, key design standards, if they do elect to do private open space, we have some minimum standards. So for instance, if you're going to put a balcony, it has to be 40 square feet minimum per unit. And there has to be any dimension of that balcony has to be a minimum of 5 feet. They don't have to do any balconies, but if they do, there are some minimum standards. Next.
And it says balconies restricted facing R1 properties. It doesn't say balconies prohibited.
The ordinance, it prohibits it, but yeah, we could change the slide.
So the restricted means prohibited in this case.
Correct. It's facing, and then if you're facing it only in one direction, that 25 feet of the return facade is also restricted or prohibited from having a balcony, similar to the RM10, excuse me. Next. So landscaping, this is largely based on RM20, except that we do have this streetscape, or excuse me, RM10, except we do have this frontage that we need to address. So for instance, here's a streetscape with a sidewalk, and then between the sidewalk and the curb is the landscape planter, and that's where the street tree would be. That's where the light would be. Ideally, there would be more landscaping between the back of the sidewalk and the front of the building than is showing in this photo. And we do have a stipulation that 100% of that area must be landscaped between the sidewalk and between the back of the sidewalk and the building.
Do we have a standard for sidewalks?
Yeah, I have a question about how require a sidewalk for one lot. We're not allowed to have a sidewalk that doesn't connect to anything, right? Like there's ADA requirements for that. So, right? Or am I misunderstanding? Like, how does that work?
It would connect to the property, and then, for instance, on Laurel, you would connect to the existing Menlo Park sidewalk that is already installed.
The lot that.
But if you
hasn't-
turn the corner and you go down Glenwood, yes,
Yeah.
eventually it would die out because you'd be going from SB 79 to R1A, and the R1A property is not mandated to do any kind of sidewalk.
So you'd have a sidewalk that goes,
Like a
On
dotted
Laurel,
yeah.
Well, the point is to go to the station, not to
I
go
keep
off
going
and
to the Victoria Manor. That's just one there, and there's no sidewalks in that neighborhood. So how does that work for that specific? Oh, cool. Well, I tried to let you leave.
Thank you. Just to interject if it's all right. So actually Victoria works out really well if they have sidewalk along their frontages. That includes El Camino, Valparaiso, and Victoria. You go down to the corner at El Camino on a sidewalk, across the street into Menlo Park where there's sidewalk, and you continue on your way to the station. Or you can cross El Camino as well And on that other corner, there's a sidewalk again. There is a pedestrian network from that property to the station.
Right.
It's
More
on,
facing side of
what's that?
the other front of the,
Victoria, there's a sidewalk on
Drive.
Victoria. Drive.
No, you would walk around the property. So you'd come out on, let's say you're coming out on Victoria, you walk out your front door, turn left, get to the corner of Victoria Valparaiso, turn left, walk along the sidewalk to the corner, across the street.
The objective for these TOD developments is to provide the path of travel from them to the train station, not into the Atherton neighborhoods. We'll have sidewalks or sidewalks to nowhere that might go the opposite direction on Victoria. I think we're required to provide a transition or something at that point, or just a dead end sidewalk. How does that work?
Well, the design details will be worked out. I think with regards to the question of developing standards, that's something that we have to do. And we're going to try and integrate that with the active transportation plan.
it's more, I would hate to make standards that put a sidewalk neighborhood side and not the other side.
Well, we also
Don't know what
want,
nuance we have in this ordinance for this one.
so when we're
specific.
talking multifamily housing, we need to have real true pedestrian paths of travel so that they can get out and get to the transit stop or get to the amenities. And so we envision, based on the standard, that the driveway is going to be on the Victoria side, which means that it's likely that they're going to have their front door on the Victoria side. So you're going to come out and have to have some sidewalk along Victoria to get to El Camino. They may have a secondary back exit to El Camino, but if the front door is on Victoria, then they need to have that.
Town Planner Brittany Benix, Mayor Holland, I understand, I think your concern is the edge treatment
Yeah.
between the SB9 property and then the adjacent R1 property that doesn't have a sidewalk. So that is something that we can consider, especially under the active transportation plan in terms of an edge treatment. It still has, if it's a path of travel, it's still going to have to meet minimum ADA standards. So we can't just have a gradual 10 feet that tapers off into gravel or dirt. It will be concrete or any other sidewalk paving material, and it will be somewhat abrupt.
Yeah, unless the town changes its standard to have it continue through neighborhoods, there will be some sort of transition to whatever it is next to it. And I don't believe that we can require them to, I'm not quite sure if we can require them to build 200 feet of sidewalk outside of their property.
Yeah, I guess
So,
more
yeah.
my question is, can we not require sidewalks for this in the neighborhood side of that lot if we're putting a sidewalk requirement on or proximate to the transit station side of the lot? It's just such a weird having one lot in a, that's, I'm just
Oh.
wondering if there's some language that we
Wait
can.
10 years.
again, I
think
mean,
it
it-
applies
Require the neighbors to put in sidewalks when
Right.
they don't have a need to put a sidewalk. in.
Is there a way we could require that one lot to be oriented towards the existing sidewalks, and then you could enter the,
existing sidewalk.
well, there are on El Camino side, right? Well, there will be.
It's really going to come down to the design of the
happen.
particular project.
No.
And if they
Yeah.
have frontages, let's take 110
Yeah.
Glenwood, for example.
Right,
If there is ingress and egress out of that building,
Until you get to school.
right, right.
if there is ingress and egress out of that building onto both Glenwood and Laurel, then you're going to want sidewalks on both sides.
Yeah.
But if it's just facing Laurel, they may not treat
Yeah,
that
but,
side of
uh,
the sidewalk. It may just be.
There's
landscaping.
There's no sidewalks on Laurel at all until you get to Nativity School.
I understand that, but
But they're
we're going
close.
to
There are
require them
across
to
the
put them
street.
in. Yeah.
There are across the street.
Yeah, and so just to kind of close that loop, if you say, for example, on the Laurel Glenwood one, If you don't have it on either frontage, then the adjacent property, when they develop, won't have a path of travel. And so it's kind of important that all of those frontages have that pathway so that the neighboring development actually has a path of travel to get to the corner. So,
Right. I mean, I think I'm just so very different having the
yeah.
one lot in Victoria Manor. Other neighboring lots aren't gonna pop there.
There's likely going to be an avenue where they can
Right.
request some sort of exception if they're developing their project differently on that parcel and they put the front doors somewhere else. There might be an opportunity for a conversation as to what works best.
That's because we're already distinguished as there's different setbacks. I'm just wondering if there's more nuance that we, if that's possible.
My concern is interfering with actual building and safety codes that are going to come up on a project by project basis. So, because we're assuming that they're even having a driveway entrance onto the Victoria property, but they're likely close enough to public transit that they could get that waived per state law. And if that's what they preferred, that could be an alternative. And then it's just pathways for circulation purposes, and maybe it's actually leading to a stoop. I do think we can look at the edges because it can be an abrupt transition. When I walk to town hall from the bus at Watkins and El Camino, I have sidewalk for one property and then I'm in Atherton and there's nothing. So, I mean, I understand what I think you're getting at, and we can certainly look at that. If not, when we come back in the future, but also in the active transportation plan, just simply as an edge treatment so that it's not as stark of a contrast.
Right. We have, Rick, you want to go?
Yeah, so, okay, let me focus specifically on this. So, 99 Victoria, we would clearly need a sidewalk on the Victoria Drive front of the property. Because that's where very likely both the front door and the driveway are going to be. There has to be a sidewalk. I understand that sidewalk would go out to Valparaiso, and I understand that there's no obligation for that developer to build a sidewalk further into Victoria Manor. Second, I understand that we're going to require the developer to build a sidewalk along Valparaiso because one doesn't exist now. And that makes sense that that would be required so that somebody could go down to the street light and cross the street to the train station. It would make no sense to require them to build a sidewalk along El Camino Real. Absolutely no sense. Number one, it's not safe. Number two, it would go to nowhere. It would, because that's the backyard of the other properties that back up to El Camino until you get to Menlo College. So it doesn't make any sense to require a sidewalk on the El Camino side.
That's presuming that the applicant doesn't have any entrances to individual units or a lobby area further on the El Camino facade. Right. So we don't know
Yeah,
that. We have to anticipate that they might, and so we have standards that are in place so that we know what we would expect.
Okay. With respect to the other properties, I understand in property D, which is adjacent to Menlo Park on Laurel, and there's probably a sidewalk there on that property on Laurel. I don't recall whether there is, but assuming that there's a sidewalk on the street facing side of D, if a D were to be developed, we would require a sidewalk on that. That makes sense. And that would abut, as Tom said, to to the Menlo Park sidewalk. But if A were developed and D weren't developed,
Right.
then you kind of have the same situation that Stacy was talking about in Victoria Manor, because I guess with that property, you could have sidewalks against both the streets, but that property is probably more acceptable from the feel of the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood because it's on the corner. But if you go to B or C, if B or C were to be developed and A were not to be developed, then I mean, I guess you got to have a sidewalk facing the street because there's going to be a driveway and an entrance. And I don't know how you avoid that. When you look at E and F, which are flag lots, are we requiring a sidewalk around a flag lot?
Well, no.
Robert,
That
about
wouldn't
a
make
public
any
person-
sense to me.
The driveway would have to be designed so that it accommodates pedestrian travel across it.
Both pedestrian and vehicular travel. That makes sense.
So, I mean, it's a
So there'd
flag
be a
lot.
sidewalk along the driveway.
It'd be across the driveway. So,
Well,
He's
I
talking
assume
from
that
the flag
if-
lot
if-
out to the street.
It's
If
already
E or
paved.
F are being developed, there's already a driveway that goes to those properties, and that driveway would be developed to include sidewalk.
Yeah, it's already paved there. So why would you put a sidewalk there if it's already paved?
there's going to need to be an accessible path of travel across the frontage.
The frontage on the flag lot is as wide as the driveway.
Correct.
So, and it's already paved. Why would you say you have to put a sidewalk on top of it?
The intensity of development, if that project were to move forward under this provision, would necessitate completely regrading of that driveway in that lot. And so when they did that, they would have to put in
A flat
Standard.
area for the
Creating
pedestrians to
standards.
walk.
But that guy's
So,
not gonna do it.
okay,
That's
so
that's a
just to
historical
finish
house.
my
He's not
comment,
gonna
so
do
I
it.
understand
Right.
there'll be a sidewalk along the flag lot driveway. That makes sense to me.
Across it.
But can I,
Okay.
can I piggyback on that? So if, let's say, B is developed and not A,
yes.
all right? So the only way that would meet the standard would be to install a sidewalk across the front of A, right?
No,
How?
they would be required to do frontage improvements on their property. And this is, so I know that it's uncomfortable to see sidewalks piecemealed on a road, property by property by property, and not in an orderly succession. That is what happens in the unincorporated areas of the county. If you look particularly in this area near Woodside High School, and you go into the unincorporated area there, you'll see sidewalk, nothing. It looks like Atherton. Sidewalk, nothing for the rest of the block. And then you cross the street, another sidewalk, and then nothing, and then another sidewalk. And so it's this disjointed approach, which is how jurisdictions ultimately see sidewalks developed. It's incremental and it's over time and it's piecemeal. The alternative would be to pursue a local public works improvement plan, which is potentially, I haven't been following the active transportation planning discussions that closely, but that might be the opportunity to get into the edge treatments, right? How do you taper from a more formalized sidewalk system into something that feels more rural?
And how do you handle drainage with it? All of a sudden sidewalk stops the water on one side of it and backs up. On
If
this.
you get our public works director talking about drainage. Robert.
We'll be here all night, and that's a
Yeah.
design specific
Okay.
conversation.
Tom Ford. So just to reiterate what Brittany's saying, if you've heard of the Complete Streets movement, it really grew out of what she was describing, these piecemeal, suddenly there's a sidewalk and then there's none. And so one of the great things about that is there's a lot of grant opportunities. So if the property owner may not be filling in that missing piece of sidewalk, there's grant opportunities for a community to go and like create the last piece, the completing of that street. So it just doesn't die out between two parcels.
Okay.
Should we move on?
Oh, well,
No,
if you're
one
moving on from landscaping, I didn't know that you finished as landscaping. Our landscaping requirements for construction are just plant something, hopefully you water it, maybe not in 3 years, we'll come back maybe and look and see if it's 3 feet tall. That's not appropriate when you have a 75-foot house or building. I think that we need to have something where it's trees because you're trying to shield the whole building as much as possible from R1As. Something like start at 10 feet, have to reach 20 feet in 3 years. They should be fast-growing trees like redwoods or something like that, not oak because they're slow-growing. You know, what we're trying to do, again, as I pointed out earlier, is we need to protect the privacy of the neighbors. So our normal landscaping requirement doesn't do that. Just plant a little bush that's 3 feet tall and hope that it's going to grow, and maybe they're going to water it, maybe they aren't. And if so, it has to be 3 feet. That's not helping. So I think that needs to be something special here, similar to what I said. I would hope that we could discuss that at the end, make sure that we have that, because you don't really specify here.
Whatever it is, it needs to be something that doesn't disrupt the sidewalk and as it
We're
grows.
talking about a budding R1A, so there's no sidewalk.
Okay.
A screening issue. Right. We got that comment yesterday or earlier today. So we talked to the town arborist and we can talk about that at the end. We have a suggested element that we could add there.
Good, thank you.
So the next section here, just a few slides, is on facade organization. We wanted to provide, and all of these have to be objective. So, but we wanted to provide just some minimal standards for really organizing a facade, both horizontally and the vertical modules that create the facade along a street. And so what we did was we borrowed on a lot of the work that ABAG has been doing and offering to jurisdictions in the region as standards that work for this element. Next. So the first piece is thinking about the facade horizontally. So we have rules for establishing a base, a middle, and a top. And again, we're only showing a 4-story building in these diagrams. These could theoretically be almost twice as tall if they were to take full advantage of SB 79. But we're just trying to show something that's probably a little more realistic. So again, the base is differentiated either in materiality, color, but some way of marking it off. And the same as you get to the top, especially if you look at the diagram on the left, there's a little bit of a tower element. So that's allowed to pop up a little bit extra height to really accentuate the top of the building. Similarly, moving vertically as you go along the facade, we established rules for modules, the larger units, and then individual bays that make up those modules. And once you have established this system of modules and bays, you can start to, as you'll see in additional standards, have setbacks, some places where the building might pop out, a tower might pop out. And instead of having just one long, relentless unundulating facade, you have a way of sort of creating a little bit more interest.
So
Next.
wait, I see the tower popping up on both the right-hand corner. But what would the design standard?
Well, we have, I can't name them off the top of my head, but we have dimensional standards for minimum and maximum amounts of a bay and a module. How much they can span before you have to break it, either with a recess or popping out a little bit. And so, but each of those have metrics, and that's in the text of the standard, of the chapter.
So I can read through some of the standards. So for width and depth, it would be a minimum of 10 feet and a maximum of 30 feet, the tower component in footprint form.
Maximum of 30 feet? What's that mean?
That means the width of the tower component, if you're looking up there, would be a maximum of 30 feet and a minimum of 10 feet. And then the height, the differentiation between the roof line and the top of the tower would be 10 feet, maximum of 10 feet. We have a projection standard. So that is how much the tower component has to have differentiation from the next plane. So if you're looking at that image, the tower is green, the image on the right, the blue area, the tower has to project 3 feet forward from. A common entry shall be provided at the base of the tower. So, right, you're kind of highlighting a grand entrance, so to speak, and you're using the tower feature to articulate that in architecture form.
And typically that's the first story? The base, right? In this image
right.
on the left, the base is 1 story.
Yes.
I mean, these are, I mean, I appreciate what you're doing, but these are a little bit misleading because all of the images of all the buildings are 3 or 4, or in maybe one case, 5 stories, and we're talking about 7 stories. So it would be helpful at some point to look at what this all looks like in a 740-story. I think that's what we're talking about, right? The SB 79.
You can go by
Possible.
Denny's and see the results. That's 75 foot over there in the new development over by Denny's where CVS used to be on Woodside Road down by 101. Those are all 75 feet or right in that area. Yeah. Down by Woodside.
Next. Mayor, should I proceed?
Oh, and the tower is higher.
What they're trying to do is to give some architectural relief to these
Yeah, I
massive
understand.
buildings, you know, popping out, the different
And the
colors.
tower,
And so
I
drive
understand.
through Redwood City and see the new residential that they've been built. And, but, council member, over further towards, I guess, take Woodside Road and take a left. There's a massive structure.
Yeah, they're
But
big.
there has to be architectural punch outs, recesses, and height differentiation and different exterior. So this is not going to see
Well, this,
a design standard.
yeah, this is bordering on design criteria, but we don't want to go there, and that's sort of works around that issue.
7.
So to be blunt, this is how you avoid a flat
Corner of that
box.
one right there.
And we heard a lot of concerns, especially during the RM program development, that's what the standards would result with is a box form. And so these standards are really respecting classical architectural design. If you look at a more classical building, you'll see that it's has a clear base middle top. There is some axis or axial points. And then when we start talking about the width of some of these buildings, especially as they're exposed to neighboring lots or street frontages, you want that articulation in the facade so that it doesn't read flat. and boring, right? There's some visual interest there.
Next. Okay. So here's just a couple of examples using the base middle top and, keying off, what Councilmember DeGolia just said. Here is a 6-story building, so it still could be another, floor taller. You can, see they've sort of created some molding that differentiates the base. Then they use the next 3 floors to have balconies facing the street, not the interior. And then they have a top, just by changing the color, changing a little bit of the window sizing and orientation. So that's just an example of base middle top. You can even see on that building some differentiation going down along the street. It's a really good architect, actually. This is a Baltimore architect. They also have a Los Angeles office, and they do really good work. And then on the right, you can see some of the modules. So you might see that where the name of the building is. That's one big module out in front. It's broken into bays. There's 2 bays on either end that have the windows. They have a different size of window up at the top. They have the inset for the exposed balconies. And then on either side of that center module are other modules. So again, they've just basically, created a system that fits along those rules. And I should note that when we were coming up with the metrics in our standards, it wasn't just numbers we were thinking up. We really relied on that ABAG document that was put together by architects and planners that really studied what's being built, what's being developed in the Bay Area, and how do you achieve, what is the right dimension for a setback, a step back, a base, and things like that.
Where is the building?
I don't know. Do you know what that, Tortigalis? Oh, that's their home office, Baltimore. Yeah, they do a lot of work on the East Coast too. Next. So I already alluded to this a little bit. Once you have that system, not just a base middle top, but the modules and the bays, then you can start to play with those modules and bays, having some relief, either popping out a little bit or recessing a little bit. Your roof can correspond to that, so it creates a little bit of differentiation. And with just a few stipulations of how often these are required, you can start to make a pretty long building start to have a little bit of relief and not be, as Brittany said earlier, just one relentless box. That's what we're trying to do here, especially when they get to be 6 stories, 6, 7 stories high, tall. What can we do to sort of break down to more of a human scale what's going on those facades?
I see that new building length. Fire only. Greater. I don't know. Doesn't seem like enough features. That's what you're showing, right?
Right. Again, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we generally tried to follow some of the rules or guidelines, if you will, that ABAG put down. But keep in mind also, when a building does that, kind of comes out, the architect is not just doing that on the facade. They have to have a way of responding in the floor plan.
Oh, sure.
So it all just has to work out. So yeah, more would be better, but I think what we were also trying to do is just to be reasonable. And we also tried to gauge, what were some of the dimensions of some of the parcels that we have in our area. But happy to talk about if you want to change the numbers of the middle column. Next. Okay, so just again, to reiterate the massing features, there's towers, There's setbacks where you, and here this building on the right or on the slide, you can see this got the two pieces that are flanking the main interior body, and they come out a little bit. I'd say it looks like about 5-6 feet. They come out, and then that creates not only the massing change of the building, but it creates an opportunity on the ground plane that you maybe have a front porch or a semi-private place where you go from the sidewalk to the building.
And a couple of things on this picture that wouldn't fit our plan. This is a classic, those balconies there are the type you see in LA, which are substandard compared to what we're talking about. They don't really let you use them. They just sort of let you open up the doors. And the other thing, these modules on the ends look more like 40 foot than we're talking about 30 feet. So it's a little bit, it's a lot different in terms of the impact that we'd see on some of our spec. But I've got the impact you're trying to show us.
Okay, next. So section I deals with entries and openings. These are very similar to what you saw in the RM10, RM20 buildings where we have standards for building entries, whether it's in a stoop, whether it's to a central elevator lobby, one entry on the side of a building. So what we tried to do, and you'll see this in the chapter 1759 draft, each of those bullets on the left have some minimum standards, dimensions for what needs to be done to achieve those. Next.
The common
Oh.
entry on this is, it looks like there's a separate entry.
They look like townhouses.
Well, actually, that's one building, but when we say common entry, we mean like one building and there's no individual entries on the outside facade. You go in one common entry to an elevator lobby. So off the elevator lobby, there's either hallways to the ground floor units or there's elevators and stairs to
But it
go
looks
up.
like these are all separate entries.
Those are more of like a townhouse type of entry.
Right.
Using-
They're allowed. They're not mandatory, but they're allowed. Again, because we have to allow 120 dwelling units per acre, but that doesn't mean somebody's going to come in and develop at that scale. So this is just a fairly dense townhouse development. So they all have their own street frontage, stoops. Some of them even have fairly good sized front porches, the wraparound porch there in the foreground, and little stoop porches down the street.
Menlo Park development across from Safeway looks kind of like this. Yeah, only it's more modern. Yeah,
I would say the Encinal,
Stanford Housing.
yeah,
the Encinal Roger Reynolds spot was,
right,
so it's a very, very desirable. Fits into.
right.
There are cases also where developers are developing this kind of a front door for maybe the first 1 or 2 stories. And then behind it is a taller building that you go in through an elevator lobby and they can get to that 7 stories, but they can still create some street life through a different typology.
Right, I would.
So we also, just like the RM40, RM20, we have stipulations for facade materials. Mostly we try to say what's prohibited, because if you started trying to write the list of what's allowed, the list would go on forever. The other thing that we did add is, you see down there at the bottom, and we added this since the Planning Commission saw it, we specifically write a standard so you don't do what you see in that photo where they have what is supposed to be horizontal siding, but clearly it's not, because they've just slapped it on as a veneer. So they're trying to tell you that's wood, but it's clearly not. So we have a standard that says anytime you change materials, it's not on the exterior corner like that. It would be at an interior corner. And the standards have a diagram that shows that. Next. Similar to our other multifamily standards, we have standards for masking equipment on the roof and visibility to that. Site lighting, so it needs to be pointed downward. If, there's a pathway across the site in the common open area to either a parking area to an accessory building. Any exterior lighting has to be pointed down and create or avoid creating spill. And you'll notice these are very similar to what we did with RM10 and RM20. Next. Oh,
Are there any noise abatement
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
things that we're planning on when you're going to have potentially 120 air conditioning units or?
well, we have a noise ordinance already in town, so that would still be in place. So
Top of it.
So what are they going to do? After the buildings start, we're going to call and say, okay, and the police are going to come out and say, oh yeah, it is noisy. And so what are they going to do? They can't tear it down. So I think we should have some ideas of how we would ask for noise abatement to deflect the noise out, out from the R1A properties. As
So
opposed to say, call the police.
with some of the equipment that you're seeing on this rooftop, it's actually not uncommon for us to see that many AC units for a single family home development. And last year, I was working with the building department team in terms of, okay, well, when you where we went out with one of the senior inspectors and he had, during the inspection, the contractor turned all of the equipment on so that we understood what the noise was when everything was running. And then they did a noise study at that point in order to pass the inspection. So, I mean, when I talk about, okay, what we're seeing on single family homes is really maybe 9 AC units. It's not the 30 that you're seeing if you look at the entire stretch. But we are taking those readings at the measurements during inspections. There is talk of, well, can we have a noise analyst come and do a more technical reading and studying? So we're looking at that as well from a process standpoint across the board.
But nine units doesn't equate to 30 to 20. Okay? It just doesn't.
Well,
So
and it's
I-
also,
I appreciate your analogy that you've given us, but I do think that perhaps we should think a little bit more about it because potentially 30 and 120 all going at the same time in the middle of summer, or it's going to make a lot more noise than 9 at a single family house.
Is the noise component at the discretion of the inspector, or is it a requirement in our inspection?
it's a requirement in our inspections.
Required to meet decibel level, time they install.
We have a decibel level for 120 units?
We have a decibel level strictly across
Okay.
townwide.
Okay, got it.
okay, next. Accessory structures. So we made sure that certain things like accessory structures, we're standing by to add a stipulation that entries to accessory buildings cannot face onto R1A parcels. I think that was something that came in over the last couple of days, a request. Also, you can imagine this kind of a facility might have a mailroom just like this. It wouldn't be out on the street. It wouldn't be a bunch of mailboxes strung along the frontage, but you would gang them and create a common area for them to take place in. And then, yes, parking.
That be considered open space?
Probably not, but that's a good question, but
What's the question?
Yeah.
would that be considered open space?
What?
That,
No.
maybe with a water cooler or a coffee maker, but why wouldn't it be? Just too much,
Because it's not.
not
open, it's
inhabitable.
Enclosed.
Yeah.
Common area.
Yeah, it's a common area.
To get approval from the office on this kind of design? A lot of mailboxes and a lot of traffic if they have to stop at each one.
Yeah.
I hope there's rules.
There's one dead postal person.
Just-
Next. Okay, so parking. Yeah, so what we did, when you're within a quarter mile of a transit station, you cannot demand a minimum. We can't have a minimum number of parking spaces that are required, but we can put maximums. We went with the metric that we used in RM20, 1.25 per unit, with an incentive that if they put all of the parking underground, they can bump that up to 2. So that's what we just used. Next. So as I said earlier,
Clarify.
yes,
Given SB 79, they're not required to put in any parking at all?
right. We don't, we can't
They could
act.
build a building, they could build a 7-story building, 0 parking.
But it's up to them to rent and sell the units. This happens in a lot of places and you think, oh, there's not going to be any parking, but people who build these kinds of buildings have clients in mind. And so there's going to be some amount of parking, or the units just aren't going to be rentable or sellable.
There additional incentives we could put to encourage parking?
I think to go up to 2.
I mean, apart from the market rate, which totally makes sense to me, I'm just wondering, one of the ways to mitigate impact on the neighbors is to have them have more parking so it's not in front of, on the street. So are there other levers that we could get to guest parking area or any that for the
It wasn't, we didn't think of it as an incentive as much as the reality that probably most of the guest parking would be a surface on grade. So we tried to just stipulate where you can park if you are parking on grade, how close can you be to the lot line? Again, we used a lot of the RM20 dimensions for that. It got really problematic on the Victoria site because they've only got that small setback anyway. So, but any other incentives, we didn't really try to do that other than just the 2.0 if they put it all underground. And the way that's written, it all has to be underground, not just the resident parking, but the guest parking.
Well, an incentive could be that we have permit parking, which would then, just like we've done over here for the library, if we're going to have 120 people parking on Glenwood and Laurel, and you can't park across the street because there's permit parking there, park. That's one way to get people to say we're going to put in on parking, some parking structure.
So permit parking like on Ashfield, Maple are to the residents that are along the street. 110 Glenwood would be on Glenwood, that would be their address.
Right.
So if we implement permit parking on Glenwood, permits.
Well, we could do it also, there could also then be permit parking on Laurel.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, right.
we can
You know
think
what I'm
of
saying.
other alternatives, but
Yeah.
So, like, are there other incentives? And, beautiful world, they build so much parking in their building that it never impacts the neighbors. So is there,
So the whole concept of SB 79 is built around the desire to get people out of their cars and to put housing as close to transit as possible. And the state is effectively responding to the fact that jurisdictions aren't doing that on their own. And so you have these transit nodes, and especially along the Caltrain corridor, or I think it's along the VTA corridor in Santa Clara County, there's no densification. And so if there's no densification, people aren't going to be willing to walk what transit planners have found the quarter-mile kind of golden standard to the nearest transit station to use transit and get out of their cars. So incentivizing parking kind of goes against the entire spirit of the law. Not that jurisdictions that necessarily aren't prepared to absorb the spirit of the law aren't concerned by. But this is really where the state is pushing us. You're going to see it from the Association of Bay Area Governments, ABAG. You're going to see it from the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. MTC, over the next housing cycles is to get as much density near transit stations. So
Yeah, well, if you look at the Green Heart, it was supposed to be live, work, and it's right next to the train station. Everyone has a parking place there. Everybody, each apartment has a car. They've taken up all the parking places down. So they're still, and they're closer than what we're talking about here. So, you know, I think that we need to give as much thought as we can to say, how are we going to accommodate?
And we can't require it, right?
Can't require it, but
That's why I was asking
incentivize.
Rick has a
Permit.
question.
But
Yeah.
what doesn't go against the spirit of the law, which is to urge people of public transit, prohibit overnight parking in the
Yes.
neighborhood on the streets.
yeah.
No park.
So what,
Could we do that? So
Yeah.
I think the issue here isn't so much how to encourage people in the multifamily development to have cars and to enable them to park them. I think your response about the developer has a market issue they have to deal with that makes perfect sense. But what does go with the spirit of the law, and we can question how realistic this spirit is going to be, would be to prohibit overnight parking in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And no park.
All I can tell you is that
Good idea.
45 years ago, when you were doing the Pleasant BART station, there was a requirement to only have one parking spot on a big unit that was right next to the BART station because everybody's going to take BART. All that did was spray the second cars all the way through all the neighborhoods, and it stays that way. If you make this one block, nobody can park? No?
Okay,
Yeah.
next. Almost done.
So
So-
if we want to do that,
Right.
should that be as part of this ordinance?
Separate.
Okay. So next, so in addition to chapter 1759 that we just gave a very high level overview of, we are proposing some new definitions. So for instance, defining what the lot area, how you calculate the lot area. This is particularly critical in some of our parcels that are, we talked about them earlier, the big, long flag lots. So that we're only measuring the part of the lot that you can actually develop on. Additionally, on the right, Councilmember DeGolier asked a few times about the 1750, the average unit size. It's tied to net habitable square footage, so we created a definition for that. This is largely based on what's in SB 79. We nuanced the language a little bit, but SB 79 actually has a definition of that term. Next. And then,
What does it mean, heated floor area? Means the finished and heated floor area.
Side apartment, it's heated,
Conditioned
not
space.
that the floor is it's conditioned space inside. Habitable.
Yeah. it's great.
and we can change that. Actually, I think what the city manager proposes makes much more sense.
Outside space.
If they don't heat some of the interior unit, then it's not. It happens.
Why
Not
aren't
if
they
you motivate them not to, maybe they'd have
requiring them to have
areas that aren't heated.
access?
so town planner Brittany
Insulation.
Bennix jumping in. This is the language that's in the state law that defines what this means. So
Have to have
we get
AC
into
there.
another area where if we start tweaking the state legal language, they could reject us. So I agree that, yeah, conditioned space makes more sense rather than heated floor area, but they're using this in SB 79. I think they're also using this definition in 1123. So it's starting to become a repeated terminology that we're seeing. And so we're just taking it and we're putting it in our list of definitions for transparency.
You
But
can't
so-
wordsmith it.
I understand. So, but just to ask a question, if you have a storage area in a unit that isn't heated, does that not count? That extra square
I'm trying
footage?
to,
Call out storage areas.
yeah, they include storage area in
Well, it
the.
says storage down there, but
Yeah, but you're indicating it's not heated. In the scale of these units, I'm having a challenging time envisioning storage space that's sufficiently accessible to a unit
Bunch of them.
and surrounded by other units that are all heated, but somehow that storage area isn't benefiting from the heat through access through a door, for example, right? There's not going to be heater or vent in the storage area, but it's part of the entirety of the conditioned space.
On the balcony where you have an outdoor storage space, just
it
for,
doesn't count.
that doesn't count.
I understand
Ah,
that. But
thank you.
I'm thinking about a developer who's trying to get additional square foot.
An atrium.
By 20-foot storage area that has no heat in it.
If it's interior to the inside of the walls of the unit, it's going.
Okay.
What about basement area?
Finished attics, garages, basements do not count.
Storage unit is tied to your parking spot in your garage.
Wouldn't be any.
Well, maybe.
Next. And then the terms that we talked about in section E, open space, we have new definitions for that because this is the first time open space has been dealt with in the Title 17.
This is where you want our input?
Eventually, I'll let the
They'll have
mayor
to
take
do
that.
a comment before.
However, I will move on and we are getting close to input. Next. So our recommendation, based on what we've presented tonight and talked about earlier with the schedule we're trying to meet, is that we get your direction and add chapter, well, your direction on any changes that you need to see or would prefer to see. And we want to add chapter 1759 and amend chapter 1760 to the Atherton Municipal Code to enable development with this responding to SB 79. The findings are that these basically address issues that are raised in the general plan to provide housing, and that you are the authority to do that. And that's what I have for right now.
So
Have any more questions before we
question.
start?
the question I have is, so if we go ahead and approve it tonight, this process goes all the way through, we still get a chance to modify it based on the process and what more thinking and more questions along the path. Is that correct or not?
No, I don't think that's correct. What we want to do is if you do have corrections or direction, we should get that tonight so that when we come back March 18th, you're basically seeing what you've asked for, and that's the second reading.
Can't make substantive change. Second reading.
Okay. Right.
Okay, let's open up public comment. Oh. Okay, closing public comment. Now for comments. How do you guys want to organize this, because there's a lot of categories that we have gone through. Do you want, maybe let's pull the ones that we want to discuss?
I noted
Or
at least
something?
three. One was the pools and other types of structures. One was
Restrictions.
landscaping screening. One was the building length and massing features required. And parking incentives we evaluate.
I have one. When we were going through the write-up, I didn't see a restriction on, just like we had in R1, RM10 stuff, no entrances open to the adjacent lots. They were a street front. See that in this document. Where I missed it, and I apologize, but should carry that comment. R1, R10. Development standards.
So,
Those are my three.
so that's the list. There's our conversation. Questions, comments on that diverged maybe from staff. So, at the list, George, do you want to?
Yep. Why don't we start with the pools and other sports courts and other things, whether they should or shouldn't be allowed?
Is that under the umbrella of open space, or is that separate?
Probably open space, but Councilmember Whitmer.
I think it's been raised as a concern as part of open space, but I would also be curious to whether or not those facilities would be allowed internally if the square footage worked out for the applicant. So I'd be interested in hearing feedback on both those things.
And internally, it's the
Like
courtyard.
if it's an indoor pool.
If it's
courtyard,
okay.
inside, if it's inside the building, no problem whatsoever. If you're saying inside the courtyard, an enclosed courtyard of the house, like the apartment, probably relent on that.
Yeah, I would say that those are the two instances where I'd agree with the idea that first of all, again, that would focus the attention inside and the noise inside rather than outside. So I would agree with that.
My only comment is that allow single-family residence development, have pools and sport courts and activity is on their property, right up to back neighbor, side neighbor. There's noise, it's affiliated, albeit it's not a community of 30 or 80, 100 people, but that would even, but
Right.
so
For the planning staff, what type of sports facility, outdoor entertainment, trigger some sort of special structures? Trigger, see,
we've got our pickleball and our tennis right next to
lighting.
residents with
like that.
lighting
Yeah.
out there. So, we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth.
They allowed to do that in their setback, or do they have? I don't have a sport court, so for the,
Oh, yeah,
allowed to
they have
be-
basketball.
I know what it is.
and-
I'm saying like, are you allowed to do it in the setback, like against your neighbor fence?
No.
This is my,
Not
it
in the
has to,
No, you
setback.
can't.
no.
Right.
And there's noise issues associated with it.
But
And in
the
our
setbacks
park,
are
we close the park at
bigger.
sunset.
right.
Than these setbacks are because we're cramming. It's a very life-changing for Atherton. What we're discussing here, this SB 79 is forever going to change the character of a couple of neighborhoods.
If things,
Right.
Well, yes, right.
So
I
why
mean,
do you
there's a
wanna
lot of
make
big ifs,
those
but
things?
we're laying the groundwork.
I think that we'd have to make sure that we weren't allowing a pool above the second floor. Like, so if they want to build it above the garage, that's the second floor in my mind. But we wouldn't want, need to have a rooftop pool, for example, or other, they come up with a stairway thing and they put a pool on the fourth floor. So it'd be important, it'd be important to maintain a certain standard in terms of where the pool be low enough so that a courtyard would abate the sound.
I
We're
think,
talking
It's a
with
structure.
Menlo College about having a sunken pool in sport court. It's the, from Isabella.
well, the impact for the pool is in Menlo School or Menlo College. It's the school's pool. It's in the college. Is substantially different than being right next door. I really feel, especially when there is a pool, there's tennis courts, there's large grassy areas, are down just a block away at Burgess. I just do not understand why we feel that we have to have the same recreational facilities there, especially when they're abutting with a lot more people, R1A neighborhood. And just as you said, Councilwoman, this is life-changing for our town. We don't want to really make a big, impact on the town where it's going to upset a lot. So, I think that we should do the same thing as we did for our, the R10 lots. We thought it was important to not do it there in the R10 lots. Now we're talking about an R120, and we're saying, oh, but you know what? It's not going to matter to those guys. If it mattered to Bay Road and Frederick, it should matter here. Can't talk out of both sides of your mouth.
Where'd we come out?
I think for my comment, I think if it is surrounded by structures or internal, I just don't think that has any impact to the neighbors. So what privacy issue is my perspective. I mean, these are going to be future Atherton residents, so we want them to have nice facilities as well. So I would also say playground structures are different, should be allowed. Did not have rules around playground structures for RM10.
So the RM10 rules are communal outdoor kitchens, pools, and playgrounds are allowed within the buildable area. Location of these features and required setbacks may be sought through a special structures permit.
Should have the same rule for SB 79. I do think that we need to include that there's no rooftop pool or facility. I think if you've got a 7-story building and you let those people go to the roof, it's going to create a problem.
Right? A party place on the roof, no?
Well, I think
They do that in LA all the time.
having something where it's enclosed, like had come up earlier, have,
Right.
structure and it's between building structure, that's fine. You can put whatever you want put there.
Right.
Sunshine though. If it's interior.
Depends on how much glass they have in the entry area.
12 o'clock.
You would not get a tan, hanging out by the.
I kind of summarize where you're at so far on this one. It's consistent with the RM10 zone, would right off. No above the ground floor.
Second floor, I guess, second floor would be acceptable.
Ground floor.
Ground floor, well, if they have an underground garage, that's not the ground floor. That's,
Above the ground.
It's a building
Okay.
surrounding it.
yeah.
No open
Whatever.
pool. No open rooftop facility.
Recommend it be in courtyard structure.
Yeah.
It's being designed for us.
Secrets
not
is
for
not
them.
That's right. Or pool.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Are you guys clear on our, okay, next on the list,
Next one was the landscaping,
landscape
Say it again.
screening.
landscape screening.
So, and then Bill wanted to have more specificity on what landscape materials we wanted to require
And height.
and height to have height.
I had suggested when I gave George my write-up that the trees, I specified redwoods because they are fast-growing. Several people put them in and they grow very fast and they get very tall. But I said at least 10 feet to start with, similar to what we did when the tree fell down out here. And then within 3 years have to be at 20 feet.
This what for between the
R1A.
unit and an R1A unit or
Yeah,
a
so-
front?
Oh, it's
Just
the
privacy
the
screen.
R1A units or the R1B units.
The redwoods could be pretty intrusive into a backyard or somebody's backyard root wise, but like damaging pool type intrusive. So if there were another tree other than redwood that would fit that spec,
You guys
It's
were
It's got to
talking
be
to Sal,
fast-growing.
right?
yeah.
So Tom was able
Right.
to talk to Sally about this, and we have an extra slide that we can show that kind of walks through the comments that we initially received from Councilmember Widmer, and then the feedback from Sally and potential modification. So let me get that up.
We really need to let a professional advise us on this without kind of a man. There's a lot of unintended consequences. when you
Right.
Plant a tree.
Right.
Okay.
Fair issue.
So the text in red
Can't see it.
is
It
what
said thank you.
Sally recommended.
Are there 34-inch boxes? There's 24 and 36-inch boxes.
I'll take her word for it. She wrote this afternoon.
I can go with what Sally gave.
What are your guys' thoughts on this edition?
Love
Yeah, I
the
love-
reference to Sunset Western
Right,
Garden book.
right.
I've got
Yeah,
5 of them
There's a
around my
throwback.
house.
There's a throwback
My
for sure.
Bible.
Cool.
All right, good
Okay.
job on that one.
Great. Okay, then the next,
Next one is building link passing features required, one, depending on the link.
Oh, that was just better as it fits. It's got to be beautiful.
No substantive change.
Bill has a
I mean, can we require a wood framed or shingled or siding? Not a lot of, with accents, brick or stone, but not just massive plaster. Yeah, not just massive plaster structure.
Or you've
Stucco.
prohibited vinyl siding.
Like vinyl or aluminum siding.
Right.
We're looking over our material requirements because as Tom mentioned, we restrict materials. Listing all the approved ones would be really extensive.
But sometimes what we've done is said every facade has to have at least 2 or at least 3 materials. So rather than saying it has to be a rustic shingle, you leave it up to the applicant to decide, okay, what are 2 or 3 sympathetic materials that I want to use on this facade?
You prohibited this aluminum siding, vinyl siding.
like that suggestion, having material
Absolutely.
not as flat.
Yeah.
So actually what we have is a limitation on the number of materials, not a minimum. And this, you do run the risk of being too busy. So the language is any building facade shall use no more than 3 colors and 3 materials. Window trim and fascia are excluded from this limit. And then heavier facade materials shall be placed beneath lighter materials.
Which is kind of like what Menlo Park did on their places down by Safeway. That fits their spec almost exactly.
Stanford. housing.
Okay.
They're really pretty.
Yeah, in the R1, on the R10, he also prohibited, says, sites, which I brought up, but
Yeah, that was on the.
maybe you covered it. I might have
we-
missed it.
George has it on his list.
Did we close
so-
the loop on the materials issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. good on that, so.
So the next one was prohibiting openings R1A properties or
Or
R1B.
Does that include patios?
Openings,
Opening.
what kind of openings? Windows?
No,
So there's-
pedestrian.
Like front doors, like we had.
Yeah, when
like
we were
had in
talking-
R1.
When we were
Balconies, don't-
when we were looking at RM10, we were presuming that there were just 10 units that could be discreetly located with entrances such that it didn't have the appearance of stoop. When you're dealing with potentially 120 units, that's not as realistic. So the restriction on entrances isn't for entrances for the dwelling units is not included in these standards. What we did include are entrances to accessory buildings. So those aren't necessarily visible. But the entrances to the units is something that we need to be able to retain.
I think you want to maximize the entrances. The buildings are going up. Okay, there's only so much space and we're got reserving 10% for open and other accessory buildings. So most of the residence hall are going to be up, right? And so there's not going to be that many entrances. And you even have in your presentation that the entrances would be, combined in your pictures.
Yes.
So,
Well,
I think that we want to restrict as many, not all entrances that are going to the neighbors. We want to have the entrances going to the street front.
Well, keep in mind too that a few of our properties are surrounded by on all sides by neighbors, right? So the flag lots that we have, E and F, I guess
Yeah, those
they're
$20 million
facing
lots,
nativity,
yeah. I
right?
doubt that they're
So-
going to sell.
well,
I'm more concerned about
yeah, so the only question I would have, and the only thing that might mitigate that would be the fire exits on a 120 person. They might require a door out every wall, things like that.
I can understand fire exit.
Well, we could say that where there is a street frontage on property, that there won't any entrances facing R1A or R1B property. That's required by fire.
Yeah, that's good.
It'll be sort of challenging with 20. Maybe what about a maximum?
Well, not just at 120, but I think on the Victoria parcel, I could see that they might need to not have a lot of units, but still some of the entrances might need to be towards the R1B. If you,
But
Just-
the entrances could be right on Valparaiso, like in that image you showed.
there too, right. I'm
The
not
entrance in the
saying,
back on El Camino.
You showed on slide 30, you showed what is a fairly attractive, granted that they're only 3 stories or stories, but they're quite attractive and they have all kinds of different facades. They could run that all the way down Valparaiso.
so the thing that I was actually thinking of,
I'd have a problem if they ran this down next to the other property on Victoria Drive. That would be,
so I wanted to pull this up because this is one of the things that I was thinking through as you made that suggestion. Is so these are stooped entries. That means that somewhere else on this property to meet ADA, they have a second door to that unit that is accessible from a ramp that we're not necessarily seeing. And so there's this perception of these are individual units, maybe like a 3-story townhome. And that's a type or a product type that's part of the overall development. And maybe behind it is more of an apartment style building that you're not even
a
reading.
common entry.
That has a common entry. And so those units are actually, they have a back door, so to speak.
Which is where
Yeah,
people come in after the
Have to have a back door.
driveway.
Right?
If
Well,
if it's built like these, there's not a lot of common spaces.
Right,
the
so,
individual
in other
units.
words, the ones that front here are your stup, might be your townhomes, but back of all of that, there might be multi-story apartment buildings on that side.
There could be a garage with a rear entrance too.
Not on
Cosmo.
the, not on the
I
Victoria
did like the
property.
idea of
Oh,
limiting the
on the
number
Victoria
of
property,
entrances.
that's what we're
I
talking
think
I
that,
can't hear two people.
sorry.
I was talking to,
Yeah, those are important people, so I want to make sure they're done. I do like the idea, I can't remember who mentioned it, of a maximum number of entrances on the frontages or the building side that faces R1 districts. That gives us some flexibility as well as the developer for implementation. It communicates that you're not expecting these individual entries. It would be a common entry. So I would put that out there.
One thing we wouldn't want the motel look where there's a hallway with the entry doors and they all face towards R1. You know, like 4 stories, there's a hallway, and they make a courtyard or orientation, and they make the front doors on the outside, and they have a walkway there. Everybody goes to their door that looks down on the people behind them. That's one thing I for sure would not want.
Oh,
That's
you
where
walk
the no
along a
balcony.
balcony
Yeah,
and
right,
look down.
well,
Yeah, well,
right.
we already said no balcony.
Well, no, I meant a
So maybe we
balcony entry.
could start
Got it,
at
yeah.
2, a maximum of 2.
Too many people are talking.
Yeah. So Brittany is. They have to ask for a variance.
Well, they would have to seek an exception, whether it be a variance or request an
What-
exception.
Can you
through-
explain why we need to allow an entry on adjacent R1A? So in these examples, I'm not talking lots in F, I understand they're totally
Right.
R1A. Oh, they really aren't because they face Menlo Park on one side. I think it's a church and a school.
It's really for flexibility in addressing safety standards with building and fire.
How does this work if this private open space wanted to have like patios back side? That something, fence or something?
Well, now we're getting into the nuance of door versus gate.
Or even like a patio door. I think you're saying a patio door.
Right, like a,
that
not a
opens onto
main,
Patio, and then there's the R1A over there.
right,
So I would assume that would be prohibited.
so should we? What?
Nothing, nothing,
He's
it's
just
a
being-
private joke.
Yeah, he was
this end of the
just
table.
writing something.
So
All right.
2 entries per facade, you mean? Like
I don't
per
know
side
what
of
the
building?
facade is per building.
Oh, per building. So-
That's facing R1A or R,
Okay.
and the only reason is for safety.
I agree with Rick. It's 2 votes.
As long as the only thing I'm thinking about is that they put the parking behind, which would be normal, and then they provide an entrance to the property on the back, just like anybody else's back door. You know, so that would be the only thing from a design perspective, I think would be a normal design perspective, particularly on the smaller development.
It does sort of limit the type of sign you're gonna see as a result of that. Everything front loaded. There may be single entrance where you might want something that's more residential. If they're doing 30 or 40 units as opposed to the 120, they might want them with first entrance route that read more residential. On the back toward an R1 where they got a 40 setback. By limiting it to 2, you're gonna push them all to the front and make them more
They can ask for,
apartment look.
they can go with the variance, sexual design and. or the-
Unlikely they'd ask for a variance because that'll trigger.
oh,
So
see, that's a
relative to
good
the
thing.
question,
Go ahead.
relative to the question about a patio, Balconies or decks shall not be allowed on walls that face an adjacent lot with an R1 zoning designation or on portions of any perimeter wall within 25 feet of the setback from the R1 lot. And so that's that kind of wraparound protection that Tom was mentioning relative to balconies. I think what we can do to make that clear that that addresses patios as well at grade is just add patio there
We're saying no patios.
on the R1 facing side.
Yeah.
No private patios.
Okay, so do we have a consent? I've lost track on the back door. So I think.
No.
I don't know what you guys think,
That-
back door.
Well, I think for ADA compliance, to be able to space if you have.
That doesn't
If,
mean
if
that,
this is a stoop type of a thing, it doesn't,
that doesn't have to be adjacent to our sides of the property. Back door.
So
I think though the number that was tossed around was no more on an R1 side.
Yeah, that was good.
Good.
If you're ADA compliant, or if you're an ADA, then you're probably not gonna be going all the way around the building to go in the back door.
Fire ingress and egress.
isn't that where the driveway is gonna be? I'm thinking about Victoria.
Right.
That's the only one I'm thinking. That where the
driveway's
driveway.
gonna be
I do
right off the
too.
street going.
Yeah, they can.
On Victoria, it would probably driveway coming in 25 foot, but the opening would, right. Garage door opening, R1,
Facing on the street.
facing R1.
R1, yeah. Oh, because that diagram, 25 foot. R1,
And there's
And-
also concerns about fire here now, but
Oh, they.
fire turnarounds and things that are going to be fired on.
like I'm
Yeah,
trash access and stuff, my
yeah. What is the trash
Well-
setup?
parking and garbage are in the back, having them walk.
Yeah.
Around is.
Right now, those standards, R20, that thing,
Okay.
they're really going to be driven by fire and
Get up and ladder.
that'll be,
There's no way to turn it around,
um,
Victoria, man.
have to come from
Exit
the
out
Tower of
to El
Valparaiso
Camino.
side.
So I don't
Okay.
think, maybe you can't do a 7-story. Maybe fire
That-
can't allow a 7-story building in Victoria Manor.
That is a potential issue, and I should have mentioned this at some point. I think before we went to the public workshop, we actually did have a meeting with the fire marshal and the building official and the public works director, Robert, who has been helping us as well, just to get kind of a brainstorming effort and everything that would be required. And Victoria is potentially a challenge. And
Is a challenge.
is a challenge. And I think what that means is that if you can max out on that site at 38 dwelling units without even touching the density bonus program, we might not see that. We might see something that looks more like 10 units. And then it's not going to look like that building. It's going to look more small and discreet. They might even have it in appearance as standalone townhomes that are somewhat detached, right? And looks more single family than this. So
They could also do an 1123 there if they wanted to, right?
yes.
They could,
Right.
they could
Well-
drive all the way down to the end of the road and go into Menlo, because it's just a gate there. Go into Menlo College and then turn right back out onto Valparaiso to El Camino. It's not an insurmountable problem.
For a hook and ladder truck,
Well,
you're not gonna
every-
go through the gate to.
Yeah. So we can do that and you turn right onto El Camino.
Let's let the
However-
fire marshal decide.
However, it's not going to be 75 feet tall.
There are things that developers can do to accommodate these requirements that I see in planning only at the time that we're actually negotiating getting the building constructed. So if some of these flag lots, for example, depending on the length of the flag pole of the lot, the hose might not stretch all that way. And so it really depends on, does your fire marshal or does your fire department have a suite of equipment that can handle that? If not, sometimes the developer actually has to build a water resource on the property to get through that. Or if the type of equipment that is allowed or that they have that can accommodate the width of that lot or the turnaround, that limits the height inherently. And so there are all these trade-offs that are embedded in the fire code that if we actually tried to make standards around,
And how does SB 79 relate to that?
it doesn't, right? It doesn't address the fire code other than the building has to meet health and safety requirements.
The
So
protection of the building
if
code.
you
fire-
have a building that requires a hook and ladder truck to get to it, right? A normal fire truck, I mean, they're limited as to how high they can handle. If that ladder truck can't operate in that location, then you can't build that building.
Correct. You would have to modify the project somehow, whether it be to provide that water source, lower the height in order to meet the demands of, or the equipment available to the fire marshal. I think Mona
not
had something
coordinated.
that she wanted to
I
add
just have a
too.
comment.
I was just saying,
They're gonna have
Brittany,
built-
that
built in Victoria Manor.
Mona wants to
Why
say
can't the
something.
hook and
Okay.
ladder truck just pull up alongside the building on Valparaiso or El Camino?
Yep.
And why are we envisioning having to go around and,
I think we
Victoria
need to
Manor?
let the fire district.
We'll
But
figure it
anyway,
Mona,
I
did you
don't
have
know.
something you wanted to add?
Mona.
I was confirming what Brittany had said, that all of the building code standards that the town has adopted with the exclusions as well as the fire codes are applicable to all development in the town. And these special housing, the organic statutes created by legislature, SB 9, 79, 300, so on and so forth, they still have to comply with all of these requirements. So they can't evade it. And if a project is designed and the fire truck doesn't meet the appropriate, can't do the appropriate turning radius, then they have to redesign it.
Already packed up. Did we
Where did it go?
consensus on the door?
I think it was no more than two. I did hear
I agree
Enough.
with
all
that.
three
yeah.
nods, but
Okay,
Right.
great.
Okay.
Got three, a lot of, okay. Hold on, is that the whole list?
that was my entire list. If there was anything specific on that.
Thing is, you addressed in your report the issue of upper story windows. I think consistent with what we did on RM10, right? Which the window has to be a certain amount of distance off the floor.
And translate. certain-
Actually, what I discovered today, talked to our chief building official. I got a little aggressive with my privacy standards. So I'm not allowed to create a sill that's 54 inches, but we can create translucent glass. But the sill can be no higher than 44 inches off the finished floor. So we've already modified the language, and one of our diagrams is wrong. We can't stipulate that you have to be at 54 inches with the sill. You can, with opaque glass, yes. And I think we were responding to somebody's request to George.
For a bill.
That was mine, but I understand.
Yeah,
the answer.
operable. We can't fix it either. We have to leave
Yeah.
it.
It's a fire
Basically,
code.
somebody needs to be able to come with, the fire person needs to come with a ladder, even if it's on the third, fourth floor, come with a ladder and get in and also bring somebody out.
But you can require the glass be obscured.
We can do that, but we can't fix it in place above 44 inches.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Okay.
And that will apply to all windows at what
I think it's facing R1A.
above?
Yeah.
It's above the ground floor. So second and above, I believe is the way we wrote it.
Okay, right. Facing an R1A property?
Any window facing an R1 lot located on the second floor or higher shall provide a translucent but not transparent glazing for any part of the window glass less than 54 inches above the finished floor.
That should be both R1A and R1B because Victoria.
We said R1, so it covers both.
R1.
Anyone else?
Mm.
So we have to make a motion to approve.
Introduce it as amended.
Okay, so
And find that it's exempt from CEQA.
motion, do we have a second?
Second it.
This is, sorry, and can we do a roll call for this? I'm sorry.
And I have a comment that I want to make that goes on the record,
Okay.
right? Because this whole planning thing is getting pretty frustrating to me. SB 9 and other recent state mandated development directives are development time bombs that not only disregard most intelligent planning standards such as traffic impacts, infrastructure updates, realistic parking requirements, and current resident privacy, but these directives also ultimately undermine undermine and very likely destroy the nature of many communities that are implemented. There's also no normal community input process. The development submits a plan meeting the state mandate. The city planning administrator is forced to approve, and then without public hearing or community notification, there's no planning commission approval, no city council review allowed, and the neighborhood residents often only find about the construction when it begins. Also, the laws don't thankfully link assessing the integration of various laws that have passed. So SB 1123 can be next to an SB 9 that can be bookended by SB 79s. So this is worse than bad planning. It undermines every aspect of thoughtful neighborhood development. This isn't not in my backyard reaction. This is why are we deliberately ruining our town response? I recommend that we approve the SB 79 ordinances to control what little oversight we can, and then give feedback to state elected officials that this state mandated community development carpet bombing needs to stop before peaceful neighborhoods are destroyed in the name of housing, and very often not even affordable housing. Thank you.
Vote them out,
Thank you.
as I've said several times.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I will. Councilmember Lane,
Yes.
Whitmer.
Yep.
Elizabeth Lewis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor DeGolia,
Yep.
and Mayor Hall.
Yep.
Thanks.
Brittany will tell you, you're glad I wrote it down because Christmas session, when I went off the rails, I did not write it down.
But I want to add to something Eric said. I totally agree with everything Eric said. And if you look at the map, that was the central map that we have, which shows the colored area, that's a quarter mile from the station. We have 7 properties we're talking about. Look at the number of properties Menlo Park has. There are certainly more than 100 properties that Menlo Park has to deal with.
Many of them are.
This law is going to change the character of Park.
Yeah.
I doubt that it will change the character of Atherton because you're going to spend if you're going to spend $10 million for a property, why wouldn't you do it in Park? Or you can do it for less money. So I don't know how much it's going to happen here, but it's probably going to happen there, and it's going to change the character. Now, it's very unfortunate.
Menlo Park adopting Will we still have
Second.
council reports and comments? Anyone? Okay, okay, I'm patient, please.
Pull the trigger.
Okay,
Good.
all right, we'll
Move to adjourn.
adjourn. All right, let's
Alright.
wrap it.